everybody, and welcome back to the Velo podcast. My name is Mike Levy, and today we are talking about one of cycling's greatest and longest-lasting traditions, the group ride. Now, if you live currently or have lived in a town of really any population, there's a pretty good chance that there was a group ride yesterday, the day before, or there's probably a group ride coming up tomorrow. Now, that group ride, it may start from the local bike shop. That's pretty common. Or it may start and end at the local coffee shop. That's also how it's done in a lot of places. And of course, there's all sorts of different group rides out there, from the few guys that meet every Saturday morning at 7 a.m. for the last 30 years, to the local meathead group ride that's actually the Wednesday Night World Championships, otherwise known as 90 miles at Zone 5. There's all sorts of different group rides. And there's all sorts of different characters. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. We're going to break down group rides. We're going to talk about group ride etiquette. We're going to talk about all the different kinds of people that show up to group rides. And we're going to talk about all the different kinds of group rides, both good and bad. But first, Josh and Alvin. Now, I know you guys have very differing opinions on group rides, probably. But before we get into that, I want to go in a different direction, because group ride is obviously like you're going out there and you're riding with your buddies for all sorts of different reasons. But at the same time, cycling, in my experience, it's always attracted loners. It's attracted like those kinds of people that maybe don't want to hang out with a team, with a softball team or a soccer team or whatever it is. So my question before we get into this group ride stuff, Alvin, I want to start with you. Did you grow up playing any team sports, or has it always been like more of a not antisocial, but a solo thing for you?
No, it honestly has never truly been a solo thing for me, honestly. So I grew up Northern California as an Asian guy. Like, you play basketball, and that's what I did growing up. There are leagues all over the place, and so that's what I did until I was no longer tall enough to play basketball. And then, and then all of my friends got into bikes around the same time. We all got into fixies, converting 80s road bikes over and destroying them. And it's always been social for me, and I'm generally a pretty social person, I would say. So, it's an interesting thing. There are definitely people who are loners that are attracted to cycling, but they end up, I think, my opinion, more often than not, they end up riding with people and enjoying it.
Yeah, that is usually how it works out. Myself, I grew up like the usual thing where my parents thought that they should force me to play team sports. And like, I remember going to play softball as a kid, and nowadays we'd call it anxiety or whatever, but just being like super scared of like someone hitting the ball towards me and it all coming down to me. I have to catch this fucking ball first off, and then I have to throw it far enough and in the right direction to where it's supposed to go, which like to me it's honestly anybody who's ever seen me catch a ball knows that's my worst nightmare. I'm like a seal. I'm like a seal clapping. And so I think for me,
I hope you
like,
close your eyes like I do. I hope I'm not alone
there. Josh, if I had to guess, you would not be a team sports guy. Am I right or wrong?
You are absolutely right. I have never played any team sports, although I did play a little bit of hockey on rollerblades, but like okay, how do I say this? We played hockey with a puck and boards and a little bit of checking, so not with a ball, which is often what you find in roller hockey. Like on Venice Beach, they would have a ball. So sort of a hybrid between ice and rollerblades, but even that, I was technically on a team. You can't play alone, but I went there by myself. I don't know. I can't even picture in my head a single person on any of those teams. And I never talked to them really. I just I played an hour at the YMCA and I went home by myself, like whatever.
Sounds like you were forced to go there.
No, it was like a fun thing for me to do. I mean, I guess you could say I was forced in that I had nowhere else to go. So,
okay.
But I enjoyed playing hockey well enough. But again, I didn't. It's like as you asked me, I was like, wait, I actually did play a team sport, but really like football, basketball, none of that. I do baseball. I would not, my God, if someone throws a baseball at me, it would run and hide, definitely close my eyes, like 100%. I do not like team sports. All team sports is sports ball to me. And this is what I always say. And even cycling as professional, like racing, is a little bit sports ball to me. Although obviously my job means that I pay more attention to it more these days.
Does that make me the jock here then? Because I grew up playing team sports.
Absolutely.
No one's ever called me that in my life. Oh man.
Josh, you sound like you're on the same wavelength as me. I remember being forced to play soccer for years as like a, like 10, 12, 13-year-old kid or whatever, because that's what we were supposed to do. And I would first off, I would spend far more time on the bench just sitting there than actually playing. Like in a whole season, I bet I would play 20 minutes. And then they would give me, every year, I would get the most improved player award because the team.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. And in my head, I remember thinking, like, I don't think I played at all. So, okay, whatever, But anyways.
Improvement doesn't just come from playing. It comes from vibes. You could be like the king of aura on your team.
Alvin, 13-year-old Mike was not thinking about vibes. 13-year-old Mike was just hoping he didn't get put on the field, to be honest.
Oh, man, that wasn't me. I always thought I was really good at what I was doing.
I learned really early that I much preferred to hang out with the women and that they didn't always play sports, although I hung out with a lot of sporty women over the years too. But, not so much the men's basketball team, men's baseball team, not really my scene.
Okay, guys, let's move on and talk about some tech. Josh, there was a funny helmet out there that just got banned. It's the Ineos Grenadiers helmet. But it's been around since 2022. Can you tell me what's going on? Why would it get banned now?
So I love the way that you set that up, because I have spent all morning on the phone, on emails, discussing how I said the helmet was banned, and it was not. The helmet was not banned, and I knew that, but, it's very complicated. For a headline, what was banned is a little bit complicated, but there's a magnetic visor, and the magnetic visor actually can go on a number of the TT helmets that Kask makes. And the visor came out, I think it came out and I couldn't even verify this, but as far as I can tell, it came out with the hour record in 2022, and along as part of that tech, and has been in use since then. It was used at the Olympics. It's been used in a bunch of things. And swapping it out is very simple. So to Kask credit, the helmet was not banned, just the visor. But yes, it was suddenly banned. And the big thing really that, the issue is not whether it was banned or not, because we can argue about that all day. It doesn't really matter. What happened is that it was banned with less than 24 hours notice when it had been in use for years. No one complained about it, but then all of a sudden, some race commissioner in UAE was like, nope, this is banned. And so that was the story, really.
So my first question is, why would it all of a sudden be banned? Is that initiated from another rider or another team being like, hey, guy, you should check this out, commissioner? Or is that a commissioner just seeing this thing and thinking, don't like it?
I mean, we can all guess, but they don't share anything. Some people, I try to pay attention to the comments in various places on the stories, and there were people that asked, well, why didn't I share the information? Why didn't I share why the UCI banned it? The letter from the UCI does not give, it's 2 sentences, and it says it's banned, and it shows pictures. There's 2 versions of that thing they have these little flaps on the bottom, and there's 2 versions of it, an older one and a newer one, and it just says it's banned. And it doesn't actually mention Kask, although that's the only, you can only use their visors with their helmets.
Is it banned because of those weird, they look like 3D printed air deflectors? I assume they're deflecting the air. Yeah.
Yeah, their fairings are air deflectors would be a reasonable way to place it or say it. And yeah, I mean, I guess, like I said, I can only guess, but yeah, I would say that it's banned under. I would guess that it's because it's a fairing and it's removable. Like, I also saw people wondering, so why is not the giant you can make your own statements about what it looks like, but that giant helmet from Giro, why is that not banned? And this is. Well, one of them is the design of the helmet versus not, versus just something that adds on. But again, we're just guessing. The UCI has given no details.
Yeah, it would be good to have more transparency there. I would argue, well, it's hard to argue because we don't actually know the reasons why, but you see some of these like proprietary aero water bottles. I mean, that's a removable aerodynamic piece of equipment. Sorry. So that's one of the sticking points is like it's a removable aerodynamic thing. It sounds like, again, just
guessing,
yeah,
but yeah, that's my guess is that it's removable.
So what did they do? What did the team do?
So I have asked Kask exactly what happened, and they did not clarify. From the pictures to me, it looks like so there are other visors. You could have a tinted visor, you could have a clear visor, and both of those don't have the little fairings, and they just swap in magnetically. So, but my understanding is that the team didn't necessarily have those just sitting there to swap in. So some people rode without a visor. And I think that they probably also cut some of the fairings off, because if you look at the pictures, you can see that it has a black edge on that visor, and the clear one doesn't have a black edge if it doesn't have the fender or the fairing.
So if I remember correctly, there are two versions of that Kask Bambino visor. There's one without the fairings at the bottom, but it still has the black underline, the eyeliner thing, and then there's this one that is like extra fairing-y. The UCI has always kind of just been like we're banning non-essential things. So like there was like the head sock thing, I believe, was it Remco Evenepoel? Like that was like a whole thing. Yeah. So that was like a whole thing. There was, I don't know. Like the UCI has been clamping down on helmets for whatever reason, and just because those plastic things are non-essential, I don't know. I don't want to make assumptions there, but that's my guess.
Part of me agrees that, of course, there has to be rules that, put limits on things, otherwise it's going to get crazy. But I wonder what bikes and helmets and everything would look like if the UCI was just like, have at it, free for all. Like, would we end up with these like crazy helmets?
You can look
even
at triathlon.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what we'd get.
Yeah,
exactly.
We get really ugly bikes.
Yeah,
and we're not going to talk about triathletes here after that, but you get really ugly bikes.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, all right. Well, let's move on to a different piece of tech, a completely different direction. We're going to talk about some sealant. At first, I thought that Silka was telling me that they would pay me $500 if I got a flat that the sealant wouldn't fix. But then I actually read the article. Can you explain what it says, Elvin?
Yeah. So the headline is Silka thinks its new ultimate sealant is so good it pays its athletes $500 for every puncture. And Levy, I love that you consider yourself a Silka athlete. First and foremost.
I do have some Silka sealant up there. I had to buy it, though, for the record.
Don't tell anyone. Just say that they sent it to you and you're an athlete.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So I guess the first thing with that sealant is that to add more sealant, you can't just put it through the valve. You got to crack that thing open.
Big chunks in there. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And that's pretty annoying for you, right? Like
it is.
That's annoying for me.
It's less annoying on a gravel bike or a mountain bike, but on a road bike, it's ridiculous.
I have a big insert. I use an insert in the rear wheel of my gravel bike, so it is absolute hell. It's a nightmare every time I have to crack a bead. Anyways, Alvin.
Yeah. So Silka goes on to say that over 60% of the Lifetime Grand Prix, like the professionals in there, use Silka sealant even if they're not sponsored. And part of the reason is because they're swapping tires all the time. This is from Josh Portner he was talking about this, but they change tires all the time. And so that silica sealant has great longevity. So you can theoretically move that sealant from tire to tire without too much issue. And one of the reasons why you can't insert it is because it has these carbon threads in there. It's not carbon fiber because there's no epoxy in there to make the fiber, but the individual threads are in there, which theoretically help to plug it up. And so this new sealant, basically, they chopped up the carbon threads a little bit more. They added 50-50 split of natural latex and synthetic latex. And so the idea is that they're claiming not only can you insert it through a valve now, just using an applicator, so you don't have to remove the tire every time, but six month minimum lifespan if you're in the desert, that type of thing, but up to 9 to 12 months as well. It'll plug a hole at least 6 millimeters in size, which is pretty nuts. And I question whether that's like a hole with like a 6-inch diameter, or if that's a slash that's 6 millimeters. Sorry,
Centimeters.
not inch. Yeah, millimeters.
Or
millimeters.
Yeah, millimeters.
Yeah. Or what's going on? But they believe in it so much that they are paying their sponsored athletes $500 for every hole that the sealant does not plug during a lifetime Grand Prix race.
I mean,
So if you lose because of a flat that doesn't seal, at least you walk away with $500.
Yeah. If you gotta like stick in a Dynaplug or some sort of plug to keep it going, then they'll pay you.
Wait, hold on.
Very
They're
marketing.
counting even using a plug as not sealing? That is
I should probably
crazy
check
talk.
that, but they said anything that doesn't seal, which could be, maybe I retract that statement. So they're saying, sorry, but
I didn't mean to hold you through the fire there.
No, I appreciate that you did, because we should be as correct here as possible. So if it doesn't plug or it doesn't seal, then they'll pay you.
Interesting. That is some very clever marketing, to be honest.
Yeah.
Very clever.
Yeah.
So I use silica sealant, just like the normal stuff. It's quite expensive compared to other sealant, at least here in Canada. It has worked for sure. I had just in 12,000 kilometers, I destroyed 7 tires last year.
Yo.
Which seems excessive.
Just
to
with
me.
like slashes, like slashing it on rocks
Yeah,
and stuff?
there's pretty pointy rocks. None of them were like, they were all big enough that like I wouldn't keep using the tire. Like I plugged them.
Yeah.
I think most of them I got home on my own. And I have an insert, like I just rode home on the insert sometimes. But like it's very pointy and rocky here. And I would be surprised if this new stuff even sealed some of that. Like some of these things, like, and they might not be over 6 millimeters, but they're like, it's this flap that's like folded out or something, or it's in a weird spot. And like tires is a whole other podcast, but I'm going to try this new sealant, I think, because I mean, I need anything that can keep me rolling, to be honest. I have bad luck with tires.
Really? Man.
Yeah.
Do you, I mean, maybe it's, I don't know what it is. Maybe I'm not shredding enough gnar or something like that. I
just where we live.
I don't really have issues.
So it's 2 things, actually. It's 3 things. I'm one of them.
Okay.
So first off is obviously I ride my gravel bike like a mountain biker sometimes, which, doesn't, not on trails, I mean, but like, I just mean like even line choices when you're on a normal fire road.
Yeah.
I might take a different line than a gravel person, not the better line or not the faster line, like just the dumber line maybe. So sometimes I'm in places that I shouldn't be. Also, I run very low pressure because it's so steep here, which causes more sidewall cuts, and that's that is one of the issues that I have. Even with an insert, and then for a lot of years I wasn't running the right tires, 100%. Fewer flats now that I'm using a beefier tire for sure, but like when you're running a low volume tire and you don't have an insert in there and like it's super chugged, that's what's going to happen. So, I would be disappointed in probably 3 of those destroyed tires, and I would probably take the blame for the rest of them. As I'm remembering myself, like literally with my rear brake completely locked, doing like 100-foot skid down a gravel road to finish a ride and getting a flat tire. That's my fault.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No. A tire should be able to last through that, actually. So I think it should be fine. There's
Yeah,
sarcasm there.
Silka, if you're listening, I would love to try some of your new sealant. I think I am the ideal person. You don't even have to pay me $500 when I get a flat, but I would appreciate it.
Yeah, it'll just chalk it up to you taking the Levy line down a trail or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, how often are we talking about sealant? Never. I think this is interesting. Also, 6 to 9 to up to 12-month longevity. That's about it. If you're a roadie, even if you're not, like the last thing you're thinking about when you're leaving the door is sealant, it's cool to think that the sealant will not only plug, but it'll also last, because there have been some lifetime tubeless tire sealants that were not lifetime because they did not plug anything. So
yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's what
usually...
that's what I'm excited about, is the longevity. I generally find that sealants are kind of all the same in a way. On a road bike, I mean, they just seal or they don't, and it's like no rhyme or reason. But if you can tell me it'll last a long time, that's great.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, Alvin, you reviewed a Pinarello, a fancy Pinarello. There's an X and there's an F. So you reviewed the X9. I want you to start off by telling me what the X series is and how they accomplish what their claims are, if they do.
Yeah. So I should mention, I'll plug the video real quick, because I do outline what the heck the differences are, because I think the average person, even if they're into bikes, like it doesn't make any sense. Pinarello's naming structures change all the time. So basically, F is for performance. It's for going fast. Think of it that way. F is for fast. So you have like the Dogma F, that's the race bike. And that goes all the way down to the Dogma F5, which is their entry level but still racy bike. Then you have the X series, which is still, they're not calling it endurance because it's still performance oriented, but think of it as a more accommodating to the average rider, I would say. So
comfort wise.
Yes. Yeah. So they're not necessarily, I wouldn't call the X series bikes, or at least this X9, necessarily like a cruiser of a road bike or something like that. It's not mushy. It's not, it doesn't feel squishy or anything like that. Like,
all right, wait. I have to interrupt you and just say, it's an endurance bike. It's just a fast endurance bike. Come on, Pinarello. Nobody wants to call it an endurance bike anymore because they think it's not cool.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a whole thing. Like, I want to call that F series, I would call it a race bike, and then I would call this just a road bike. That's
perfect.
A whole other
I love
thing,
it.
though. So the X series is for people like who are perhaps non-competitive, who will benefit from having a little bit more height to their bars, or a little bit more stack underneath their bars. So yeah, the bikes are a little bit less
Alvin,
stiff riding.
1 second.
Go ahead.
So the bike is apparently supposed to be more comfortable, but there's also some geo differences there as well. A little bit taller stack, a little bit shorter, maybe a little bit more upright, I imagine.
Yeah. So both the fit geometry and the handling geometry change. So like you'll see trail figures increase on the X series. So a little bit slower handling, with the idea of making it less nervous feeling or twitchy at higher speeds, compared to the F series. And then your fit geometry changes, so it's a little more upright.
Is it more comfortable though? How'd that pan out?
So this F series, one thing that they do is that they have these, the seat stays out back. They have this little X pattern. So they call it their X stays, or flex stays, depending on where you're reading or who you ask. But basically extra slim, and then they have 2 points of contact with the seat tube, with the idea that it adds a little bit extra stiffness to that tube that is really, really thin, but it also it's supposed to dissipate vibrations. To answer your question though, does it ride smoother? I don't think so. And a lot of that has to do with them using the exact same aero seat posts as they use on most of their other bikes.
Oh no, like a big deep thing that's not going to flex. So what's the point of the more forgiving frame then?
Yeah, I mean, there are a couple of different reasons. Like Cannondale's done it on their scalpel like bikes, and Lauf does it on their gravel bikes, where they have some flex built into the rear triangle of the bike, and that's a similar idea here. And that is for traction. It's also for like ride smoothness at the saddle. Just for me, at least, like I'm a smaller rider, I can't get my saddle up super high, and as a result, the seat post doesn't flex a ton. And this bike rides as stiff as the Canyon Airroad I have.
Oh shit.
Yeah, with the same tire and wheels, I would say.
Yeah. So I immediately have two questions. If people are looking for more comfort, obviously a slightly wider tire, but also why aren't people running? So I'm looking at my own bike right now, and I have that Ergon Flexi seat post thing. Which I have good and bad things to say about that, to be honest. But
yeah,
to me, like, I would buy a sporty fast road bike, and I would put that seat post on it, and I would be comfortable. Maybe with a nice seat with a more flexible shell. That seems like the way to go, but I don't know. What do you think?
So there are so many schools of thought on this. I think if you think of like talking about that Ergon seat post, like we also see it on Canyons. So it's on the Endurace, their endurance bike. It used to be on the Grail, their performance gravel bike. And it's no longer on the new Grail. They went for a D-shaped seat post, and the feedback from their pro athletes apparently was that it actually flexed too much, and so like on the bumpy stuff. So
okay,
different schools of thought there.
I would say it creaks too much, but that's just me.
I see. That's another thing. I haven't had issue. I had that seat post on my gravel bike for almost a year. Didn't have issues, but I also had a ton of carbon paste in it. So the X9 and most of the X series, for that matter, will fit a claimed 35 mil tire at least. Pinarello is generally pretty conservative with that. I was able to fit a 38 mil gravel tire in there.
Okay.
And it was a little bit tighter than I would like, but it fit.
Yeah.
So these bikes also come stock with a 35 mil tire, which is wider than most of these like endurance bikes as well. So I think they know, hey, this bike doesn't have any built-in elastomers. It's not as smooth riding as these other endurance bikes. We'll compensate with a wider tire, which I think is fine.
Yeah. So overall, you like the bike, but maybe not the most forgiving road bike out there, it sounds like.
Not the most forgiving endurance bike, but I really do think that for most people looking for a Pinarello, this is probably this series, not necessarily the X9. I would say jump down to like Ultegra or 105 DO2. This is the bike they should be riding. Also because especially, I need to rant about this. I know you're trying to keep this short, Levy.
No.
But one thing that Pinarello does with their small bikes in the Dogma lineup, both the Dogma F and the Dogma X, because there's the Dogma endurance version, is that they spec one fork rake. That doesn't sound like that big of a deal, but if you're a smaller rider like me, I'm riding a 50 or 51.5, the slacker head tube angle that they put in paired with the one fork rake means that the handling is pretty wonky. You get some like wheel flop like on steep climbs because the trail is so much longer. Yeah, it's like on the Dogma F in a size 50, it's like almost 70 mil trail, which in comparison, if you go up to like a 55 centimeter Dogma F, it's like in the high 50 mil, which is more in line with a race bike.
That's a huge difference.
Yeah, it's a big difference. And so there's a discrepancy in handling. The X series, as well as the F series, they have two different fork rakes. And so it's much more consistent across sizes. So if you're a smaller rider, I almost recommend, like, even money, no object, look hard at the X series, even over the Dogma X.
I think it's important that you call this out because all cycling brands will tell you that we want more women on bikes. This is an important goal. And then they do not build bikes for women. Women generally ride smaller bikes. Pinarello is providing a bike that is substandard at those sizes, and we should be calling that out.
At least in the Dogma lineup. The X9 has like 9 sizes. This X series has a ton of sizes, even going down to like a 42. And I love what Pinarello does with its, they call it endurance plus geometry here. I think they do a great job with it. It's just at the top level, they need different fork rakes.
Just before we move on to Alvin, the bike comes with a 100 millimeter stem.
Yeah. Yeah, for a size 51.5, and that's also another Pinarello anachronism. Like you look at the geometry chart and you're like, oh, the reach and stack figures are in line with what I would expect from other endurance bikes. For me, in the 51.5 is like 370 reach or something like that. If you look at like a Canyon, it's got a 90 mil stem. If you look at the Trek Domani, it'll have an 80 mil stem. Pinarello just has a history of speccing a slightly longer stem than what you would expect. When I worked in a Pinarello dealer, we were often swapping out stems, which only gets harder with this because on this X9, it's got a one-piece barn stem and it's expensive.
Yeah. Okay, interesting bike. I thought it looked good too. The dogmas look funny to me. I don't know anything, but they look weird, man.
It's a great bike. I think, again, for most people, like if you want a Pinarello, you should be looking at this.
Yeah. Okay, guys, let's talk about group rides. I think like we started off, like I said at the top of the show, I think they're like one of cycling's greatest traditions. And even if you're not a big group ride fan, it's how I really was introduced to road riding. Geez, like 25 years ago, I remember, like little pale Mike Levy showing up to the local shop group ride. He had a Le Mans Zurich, and at the time, like you show up to these rides, and if you've never been to a group ride and you show up to one, I feel like I remember being quite intimidated, but everybody is so welcoming, and that group ride dynamic is, I think it could be pretty cool. So Josh, I want to start with you. Let's start off with some group ride stories. I want to hear about a group ride story from you.
I hate group rides. Can I just tell you? I hate
That's
group
why
rides.
I started with you. We want to end on a
rides.
positive note.
I want to just say I love riding with people. I despise group rides. I hate them so much. But not always.
Is that just like a blanket statement? Like group rides of all kinds? You don't like them, Josh?
I'm not going to say that there's never a group ride that's fine, but like there's so much miss in the hit that it's not worth my time finding the ones that I like.
I need to know why. You're going to have to tell me a negative experience you've had.
Yeah, please.
Okay,
yeah,
so
trash
this
someone.
Is the thing.
Let's do it.
Yeah, no. So
let's heat it up in here.
I thought a long time about this, like, what is my story? And I do have a story of somebody dropping a bike and subsequently a set of Cadex wheels with carbon spokes got destroyed. And that was not a good story, but also that's not really a group ride thing. That was the only thing I could think of where it was like, well, this happened, but like, that's really like, I let a friend take a picture of the bike and it fell and it was like a dumb thing and whatever. That has nothing to do with a group ride so much. It just, the thing that I hate about group rides is that they very rarely fit. So I remember my first experience with group rides, and I didn't even do this ride, was in Southern California at the Rose Bowl in Pasadena. There is this group ride that happens on Tuesday nights, and it is there's like a, 3.5 mile loop around the Rose Bowl, and it's just a road, and there's very few cars, and there's runners, and there's this huge group, 150 people, and they are going so fast, and they're all yelling. They're like, runner on the left, runner on the right, whatever, and they're screaming, and they're going like 28 miles an hour, and everyone hates them. Everyone hates them. And I still hate them. As an experienced cyclist, I hate that group ride because, it's just so obnoxious to everyone else that is there. However, I did not ride with that group ride. So, again, that's sort of a different sort of story. Mostly what I find with group rides is that they are frustrating because either they are super welcoming to new people. And while I love that exists, that's not really for me. I'm not at that spot anymore. And I am so happy that exists. And I would 100% support that experience. But I only have a little bit of time to be on my bike, and I probably can't go join those group rides. And then there are So then from there, you start to get into what happens from there. And this is where things go off the rails for me, is that I despise all the rules. When you go out with 3 people and you just sort of know these people and you just sort of ride, And I'm very rarely the fastest person. And like we'll get to the top and they have to wait a little bit, and so be it. It's fine. We chat, we talk, it's great, lots of fun. But then there are these rides where it's like it's not quite the slowest ride, it's not the most like beginner ride, but I'm now too fast. And then like if I go off the front and do something else for a minute, then I get a little talking to later. And I'm like, why? Just leave me alone. Like,
Josh got
wait for
scolded
you.
one time. He's just hanging on to it for years.
So
Man,
annoying.
yeah. Don't use this as a therapy session, Josh. Please.
So yeah,
The worst
Or
is
maybe
Zwift.
do. Maybe do.
Can I talk about Zwift group rides? That's a good one.
Yeah.
Actually,
Yeah.
this is one. So I do a lot of group rides on Zwift, and it's better because like it's just chat. So like, and I don't know these people, so like it doesn't matter, whatever. But the thing is that these group rides, they're advertised as with like, whatever watts per kilogram. Let's say 2.8. Let's just say, and then it used to be that there was like a group of people would always go off the front. And I would always try to be in that group of people because why not? They're riding at the right time. And the real issue is people would say, well, just join a different group ride, except that Zwift limits the number of things that can happen at any particular time. So if you want to ride with people at like, I don't know, 6 p.m., like there's only one thing to do. And it used to be that another group would form that was faster. And I was like, great. And I would just go off and be part of that group and like, so be it. I don't see the problem with that. Let the other people be in the group they want to be in. Everybody's happy. Except that, no, they would complain about it constantly. It was just constant complaining about they're off the front. They're not off the front. If I'm in the back, and then Zwift years ago introduced the fence, right? So now ride leaders, if they want to, they can say, you get certain amount of seconds in front of the ride leader. And after that, you'll get dropped from the ride if you exist for more than 30 seconds or something. Great. So then everyone complains constantly if you ride near the fence. You're too close to the fence. You got to ride. Why is there a fence if you're not allowed to ride next to the fence? What the hell are people talking about?
yeah.
I'm going to take it down.
You're worked up, dude, please. Yeah.
I thought I would be the antisocial one in this group. You know what it really comes down to for not everybody, but you're at a point in your biking life where riding with a group with like set rules like that, it doesn't sound like it really jives with what you want to do. Like there's a lot of good parts to a group ride. We're going to talk about them. But having to ride with a group and like kind of obeying the rules, the so-called rules, and also the complaining, the vocalness of the complaining sounds like an issue as well.
It's grating to me. But here's the other thing. Like, so then you find these group rides. So in Portland, I'll call out a local one that I rode with. Cyclepath PDX is a local bike shop. I went on a December, like a super cold, miserable ride with their shop. And it was amazing. They were all faster than me, God knows. But like, and it was miserable. I got like mild hypothermia at the end of it. I like climbed in my bed and shivered uncontrollably when I got home. But like, no one complained. And if you went off the front, then like you just waited at the top of the hill, even though it was cold, like whatever. And the people at the back, there was a hill that was like 20% or something, and a few of us walked up it. No one complained. It was freezing cold when we got to the top. People were waiting, and it was fine. We just got on the bike and we kept going. I didn't complain that they were faster. They didn't complain that I was slower. It was great.
How much of that is the culture of the ride versus the situation
Exactly.
that you all put yourself in, do you think?
Explain that question to me better.
Is the ride like inherently like the culture of it pretty like inclusive, and will it like accommodating to people of different backgrounds and skills and desires? Or is it like bro, it's mad cold, it sucks, just we're in this together against the elements, even though we put ourselves in this situation?
Yeah, so I guess really if I I'm being very I'm being abrasive for the sake of conversation, but like really what I want in group rides is consistency and clear stated what it is. So like, I'm not going to go to the beginner ride because it's just, I'm not going to do it. And I don't, as I've said many times already, I'm not upset that those exist. I'm very happy that they exist. And if you were like, hey, we really need you to come to this for some promotional reason, then great. But like, just in general, I wouldn't go to that. And I would go to the ones that are, the culture is like, we're in this together. We're just going to ride hard and it's going to be what it is going to be. But sometimes I get frustrated with the in-between rides that sort of bounce back and forth, which I guess is also what I'm complaining about when people say, well, you went too fast or you went too slow. So I don't know where the balance is. My choice is just to not do group rides.
Yeah. Levy, before you get into this, it's probably I would be curious to hear what everyone's definition of a group ride is.
Yeah. I think there's all sorts of group rides.
Yeah.
I mean, there's obviously like the one that everybody thinks of is the group ride that leaves from the shop, 20 minutes after the shop closes. To me, that's how I grew up riding road bikes from Pedal Sport, the local shop in Chilliwack. And it was like Wednesdays and Saturdays or something at 6:30. And Wednesday was the chill ride and maybe Saturday was the faster ride. That's like the classic group ride to me. But the group ride that I think would appeal to Josh, or someone like Josh more, I call it, is the group chat ride. And what that is it's not a public thing. It's like, you've got your 3 or 4 homies that you've been riding bikes with for a decade or more, and you have a group chat. And it's you guys are meeting here, your wheels rolling at 11 or wheels rolling at 9 or whatever it is. Everybody has their shit together. Everybody has known each other for many, many years. And it's like for lack of a better term, like the safe spot. So to me, like that to me is the ideal kind of group
That's
ride.
what
It's
I
like
love.
it's like the semi-private thing.
I don't actually call that a group ride, even though it is technically a group ride. When I think of group rides, it's more like the shop ride.
Yeah. And that is, I think that's what most people think of. And the shop ride, I think a lot of times those are also the group rides. I have another category here, and it kind of overlaps with the shop ones. And it's titled The Group Ride That's Been Going for 30 Years. And my notes here, there's a ride in my town that is exactly like this. It's a bunch of older riders who have been meeting the same day of the week, the same time, regardless of the weather, regardless of what's happening, for like 30 years. And these guys have the old man strength. They don't complain. They
I love
just
those
get on
rides
with
too.
it. And a lot of times it looks like they're like really just happy to not be home, to be honest. Like these are like normal dude, like, people who are like, they might ride twice a week, and they're meeting at 7 a.m. at the mountain Saturday mornings for 30 years. And like all these guys are strong as fuck. They're like 50 or 60 and they just destroy me.
There's a Portland Velo ride on Tuesday nights at like 6, I think, it happens all year, but I only go occasionally during the summer. And that's exactly like that. And I love that ride so much. And they're welcoming to people. And it's like, it's not beginner, but like they're very welcoming and no one complains. And it's incredibly fun. I love that ride.
Man, sometimes I'll open up Strava and it'll be like December and it's like, minus whatever. And there's a foot of snow. And I scroll down and I see like these 2 old guys, they did the AM ride. And like, I'm not getting out of bed. I'm not getting out of bed till 10 a.m. Why would I? It's cold and shitty. And there's something about that. Like, I mean, that's another reason for group rides to exist because, well, number one, a lot of times it's like 1 or 2 of the only times that whoever is going to ride during the week. But also like when you have a ride that's set in stone, it gets you out there. Like, I know you guys, we have like this flexible schedule. We ride whenever we want. Like, that's not real life. Most people have, real life jobs and kids and all these things and stuff. And to have that like locked in, like, your wife, your family, they know that you're doing this ride this time every day, regardless of the weather. And it gets you out. It commits you to the ride too, which is super important, I think, anyway.
Yeah.
And then obviously this is also one of Josh's favorite group rides, the one that's called Isn't It Just a Race, aka the Wednesday Night World Championships. Every town has one of those, don't they?
So I don't actually mind those rides, although I can't really be all that competitive. I don't know.
But that's
But
half
I
the
don't
fun.
mind getting dropped. It's okay if I get dropped. I'm just like, well, such is life.
Yeah, dudes, the thing is, you're allowed to be an asshole and aggressive on the bike as long as you get smashed. You know, it's when you start being aggressive and an asshole and you're also way faster than everybody, that's when you're just an asshole and nobody likes you. You know, like if you're the pro and you show up and just crush all these normal people and you're a dick about it, well, then you're just a dick. But if you're like an average rider like us and you show up and you kind of have an attitude and then you don't mind that you have to walk up that 20% hill and everything is fine and no one's complaining and you're laughing about it, that is the good balance, you know? 100%.
Yeah, that's what I as abrasive as I felt myself being in the other part where I was just like, I hate group rides. There is like, the more you talk about all these nuances, I'm like, oh yeah, I really do like that, and I really do like this, and I really like, there are these great things. And also, I'm gonna shout out to the homies, James and Christian, man. Those guys are my boys. I don't have boys, and those guys are my boys. And we go ride, and we spend like, I don't know, 8 hours together, right? On a Sunday, we're riding for 150 miles. Like, yeah.
Exactly. And in a lot of ways, it's not like the cliche shop group ride, you know, of course, but those are your homies. You're on a group ride, and like that's that group chat ride. And like I'll shout out like Matt and Derek. You know, Matt and Derek, we do these rides and we're together for hours. We don't kill. They still want to ride with me after, which is crazy. You know,
I know, right?
Yeah, and I think it is special to have those kinds of people to ride with, because when you do rides like that, whether they're hard because they're intense or hard because they're crazy long or weather or whatever, like you need to ride at your own speed, right? You need to do the ride at your own speed. So you kind of have to be at the same pace and enjoy the same kind of ride and feeling as those people. And that's very hard to come by, I would imagine.
Yeah.
I mean, I know
those people have shifted over the years. Although not Christian, but like there are a lot of people come into my life and then they go back out of my life. I often get people go, oh, I'd love to ride with you, especially like they know me from the work that I do, and they're like, yeah, and I'm like, great, let's ride. And I'm like, I do like 120 miles on Sunday. Anytime you want to show up. Crickets. I never hear from them.
Yeah, it's also an intimidating thing, I think, to do a ride like that with somebody that you don't know. Like, even if you do rides like that all the time, I'm always hesitant to invite people that I don't know on some dumb adventure of mine, because I don't know if they're going to show up with enough air in their tires. But I know Matt and Derek and Phil and Alex, those guys are going to show up with their tires inflated and their wheels rolling at the right time. They're not dumbasses. So we can go way out into the bush. It's okay. You know, the group ride that's actually a race, that's an okay place to be a dumbass. Like, dumbasses, we're all dumbasses. We should show up and like try to be dumbasses at those rides, even if we can't hold it for more than 20 seconds. But I think you need certain people that are on the same wavelength. They share the same vibe as you when you're doing those massive rides, Josh. Otherwise, it is just asking for trouble, right? Yeah.
So let's say you don't have that. I am fortunate to have that here. Like I am in a group chat called the East Bay Tarmac Owners Association, because basically everyone has a specialized tarmac.
Nice.
And including myself. I've coalesced because there's a culture to it. When I moved to where I live in the Bay Area, I obviously didn't have that. That was like 9 months ago at this point. Like, I'm curious to know, like, if someone who doesn't have that type of community, that like group chat ride, because that is, I agree, like the best kind of ride. Like, how would you all go about like building that or cultivating that?
You know, you just have to network with like the same kinds of people that do those same kinds of rides. And sometimes that does require showing up to like a shop ride that you might not usually go to, which is like, for me, that's scary as fuck. Like, I don't want to show up to some ride with a bunch of strangers I don't know. I find that like super intimidating. And but to get in, like a friend of mine, he moved hundreds of miles away, and he lived there for, geez, he must have been there for 10 years, something like that. And before he left, we were riding together all the time with a handful of other people. And then when he moved, like he spent, I think he told me like he basically didn't ride with anybody else for 5 years. So I think bikes can be like a super cliquey thing that's
Absolutely.
obviously, yeah, and it's hard
Oh
to
my gosh.
find to your right people sometimes.
Hang on, I'm
Hard to
going to
find
actually
your
push
people.
back on that a little bit, because I don't know if clicky is the right thing, although you could label it like that. But think about what you said before. You're like, oh, you're going to go out for 100 miles. You're going to do some stupid thing. And you want to make sure that the person that you're going with, like, is going to be solid for you. And that's not really the same thing as being clicky. That's being like, it's hard
Yeah.
to know if those people are the right, like, match.
Yeah. And personality wise too, like I know people that would love to do big long rides with me, and I would like to do maybe much shorter rides with them because the personalities don't vibe, you know what I mean? Yeah. It's not gatekeeping. It's, you just got to get the right vibe.
Yeah. I will say that group rides, like of the 4 that you've listed here, Levy, like I think all of them, even the classic no drop group ride, has a propensity like to be clicky, like especially if you have the same group of people for a long time, like, and they have the mindset that they just want to hang out with those people. Like the last place I lived in Texas, like has a reputation for being kind of clicky, and it's because everyone who's been everyone who's there has been riding together forever. They probably went to high school together as well.
Yeah.
And so like if you're an outsider, it's hard to break into that. Yeah, and if there's one thing that I like wish for people who are like trying to get to that like group chat ride level, like I guess the one piece of advice is like you gotta tough it out, and you gotta talk with everyone, and that requires skills that don't involve like pedaling, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But it allows you, if you're able to build up those skills, it allows you to pedal with people that you might become friends with eventually, and that's what's really cool about group rides, I think.
That was exactly the advice that I was going to give also, because I didn't actually answer like what you do if you don't know people. And Alvin like nailed it. You have to put yourself out. And I know it's scary and I know it's hard, but I will give the example that I would tell people, which is we have the Sabi shootout here. I think it's on Sundays, and it's basically race. It's like the whole point is to simulate race situation. So we go out to this place where the roads are flat and straight, and well, they're not straight, but whatever. And they like do like mock racing. And I like did a loop of that, and I got to the end, and my cleat actually came loose, and so whatever, I stopped. And I looked around, and there were other people, and I said, hey, this is kind of boring. Well, how about we go to the hills? And like 3 people were like, yeah, all right. And I didn't end up that day like continuing that relationship with those people, but I easily could have. And I mean, that's what you got to do. You have to be willing to talk to people. People are nice usually.
Yeah. Cycling, one of the benefits of cycling is that you already have a shared interest, and more likely than not, you probably see the world with a similar outlook more often than not. And so that's, I don't know. So I feel very blessed to, one, like be in cycling and have the friend groups that I have, but also I should say, like, you know, like I am a minority, but for the most part I fit into all the cycling stereotypes, so I can fit in pretty easily.
You got
like,
the tarmac, you're good to go.
I do except it's green and not matte black with white logos, so maybe I'm standing out just a little too much.
They make you ride at the back.
Yeah, no photos of Alvin. Yeah, and there's, I don't know. I have a lot of opinions on this. In San Antonio, that last place where I kind of felt like I had a tough time finding the group rides that worked for me, like I eventually led a like gravel collective, which was just like a monthly group ride thing, and it was in that classic no drop group ride ethos, and that was really good for meeting people. But I also made sure that there was a like a pointy section, so we would have different leaders.
Yep.
So we had someone that was just like, this guy's cat 2, cat 3. I know he's going to want to go hard. We point out to that everyone ahead of time, hey, he's going to go hard. There will always be someone in the back, in case you fall off.
That is such a great way to handle it. That's such a great way to make everyone feel
Yeah.
like at home.
Yeah. And so like, if you don't have that group, like, I hate to say it, like, you might have to go make that community yourself. That's the other thing about group ride.
Which I to me, I'm not that person, but I want to shout out someone here. We have the Squamish Gravel Club, and Alex started it, and he's growing this thing. You know, Squamish is obviously a town full of mountain bikers for obvious reasons. He's grown this thing to the point where I think they have like 40, 50 people show up. And
Wow.
yeah, and you know, these people that organize not just this group ride, but just like this kind of group ride in general, they are actually angels, you know? Like this ride, you have to sign a waiver. And so it's like, it is fairly organized, but they have someone in the back, they have someone in the front, everyone knows the route. There's all these regrouping points. It's friendly, but if you want to go off the front and be a dumbass, go off the front and be a dumbass, you know? And if you want to just hang out and chat. And I just think it is pretty cool that there are people out there who will organize something like this and be, you know, semi-responsible for 30, 40, 50, 60 people showing up on a ride, because I'm never, ever, ever going to do that. Ever.
Yeah. Give those people a hug, because it's a lot harder than it seems, even though it seems really hard.
I get stressful just thinking about it, you know, like what if we dropped so-and-so and their thing broke, and like, I don't know, like, and we're not way out there, but just because this is a no drop ride and a regroup ride, it does imply that sort of responsibility for us to stay together. And I don't go to them all that often. It's a lot of people, but when I do, I have a ton of fun. And they're not the rides that I would normally go to. And that's my other piece of advice too. Like, do some of these group rides that you wouldn't normally go to, whether it's the Wednesday night Zone 5 World Championships, or whether it's like the chill group ride with 60 people, which brings me to my story. I want to tell you guys my group ride story. And then I want to ask you, Alvin, your group ride story. So here in Squamish, every year for the past handful of years, a local rider named Lucas organizes this Squamish Triple Crown. It's 10,000 feet of climbing, over 10,000 feet of climbing, which in a lot of places is like, I mean, it's a big day no matter what. In a lot of places, it comes easier than here. Everything is so steep here that it is like a lot of these climbs that, you know, the large majority of people are walking up them because they're steep and they're loose, sustained sections of way over 20%. You know, it's 3 climbs, and the last climb, especially the Gandhi climb, has multiple sections of over 20%. And this is stuff that like most of these people wouldn't bother riding because it's objectively a terrible route. It's 3 out and backs up 3 mountains, these gravel climbs that add up to, last year was 13,000 feet, I think. And it is objectively a terrible, terrible route. And it's a terrible ride. And like, I don't know, like 30 people show up to the start of this thing, and I think 10 or 15 people finish it. And for such a terrible route, it is the best route ever, because I would never do this ride on my own. I would never do a ride like this that's just 3 out and backs up these terrible climbs. But because it is like this organized thing where everybody shows up and everybody tries to finish this terrible ride, it's what kind of makes it so special. You know, it's like, it just wouldn't happen if it wasn't a group ride, I don't think, which is part of the special things of group rides. Yeah.
I think one thing about like, when you know a group ride is good, you can tell that everyone kind of has like a shared goal. And that like Triple Crown thing, everyone's got the same goal of just getting that thing done.
Yeah. And like the different people that show up to this thing, like these are gnarly ass climbs, and a lot of sections are unrideable. And I watch like people show up on bikes that are 100% not suited to this ride. Like, you are a straight up roadie wearing road shoes what are you doing here with these 38 millimeter tires pumped up to 80 psi? Like, this is not good. We have everything from that to like some fat bikes show up. In a lot of cases, the fat bikes are the perfect bike. And everybody that finishes this or gets even close to finishing it's just like this wide cross section of people. And I don't know, it's just cool to see. I'm usually not that guy, you know? So I think it's really neat. And we finish up at the top of the Gondi. This gondola goes up there and there's a restaurant up there. And we all sit on the grass and people are drinking beer and eating their poutine or their hot dogs or whatever. And everybody's just dead. And yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
That's my group ride story.
Love it.
I mean, that sounds that sounds amazing. Although to me, that sounds a little more like an event than a group ride.
Well, I don't think we want to call it an event because I think, and when you call it an event, that like starts like, people start thinking it's supported or something when it is all self-supported. I had my girlfriend actually take her scooter and meet us at the bottom of the third climb, way down this gravel road, full of like pastries and pop and like all this other stuff. So it's like, and other people do the same thing. And so it's like, it is like semi-organized, but nobody wants to be responsible, you know?
Yeah,
I mean,
there are legal repercussions with calling it
Yeah.
an event. As opposed to a group ride.
We have that here in Portland too, where there's these hill climb. They're road based mostly, but there are these hill climb events, and the website says they're canceled. They're always canceled. But yeah, I don't know. Those are events, and those are cool. I like those a lot. You know, the reason I'm talking again is because I'm listening to your stories, and I'm like, maybe I just need to like go find better group rides again. Like maybe I need to go. It's been too long. Like there's good things out there.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just so hard if you're not like, again, it's just so hard if you don't fit into that like kind of that mold or mindset of like a lot of those group rides. But I think one of the benefits for the three of us, we all live in places where there are a lot of cyclists, and so you can find your niche pretty easily. And so hopefully everyone can do that too. Because more often than not, if you wish that there's a specific kind of group ride, I'm of the opinion that there are going to be other people who wish that there is that ride too.
Yeah. And I think that's how the Squamish Gravel Club started. Like Alex wanted to create something, and now he's created this like massive community of gravel riders in a place where you might not expect them to be. Alvin, I want to hear your group ride story.
Oh man. So this one revolves around etiquette, I think. So when I lived in Texas in San Antonio, like I was getting pretty fast. I'd been training, or fast relative to what I was, and I was training a lot, and I wanted to go to the fast ride in town. So there's the equivalent of Wednesday Night Worlds. The trouble is I had been riding with like occasionally with other people, and I understood that San Antonio has like a slightly different way of communicating with while you're riding than other places I had been in Northern California and Utah. And this place, basically, I do the ride. I felt great, feeling good. I understand, like I was told ahead of time because I asked like, hey, are there sprint points? That type of thing, places where we're chilling, like, or I had just straight up went to someone and I was like, hey, can you let me know when it's about to heat up, type of thing. And generally people are pretty accommodating of that. At the end of the ride, I got chewed out by a regular because I didn't communicate the way that they had anticipated. I won't go into the specifics, but they were basically hitting like the side of their hip, and I'd never seen that before. I'm used to like hand motions and that type
Hands
of
or
thing.
elbows, hands or elbows.
Yeah. But they were communicating in a different way, and I got chewed out. And then someone else that I knew who was also at the ride, like when I was just like, okay, I'm sorry, whatever. And I left, and it's kind of that left kind of like a sour taste in my mouth, or bad taste in my mouth afterward. But they came over, and, you know, like this requires like emotional intelligence, but they came over and they're like, how are you feeling about that? Like, like, and I was just like, dude, I had no idea. Like, I've always gone to these rides and they communicate in a different way. Like, I don't understand that. And they're like, oh, I didn't realize that like we communicated differently. And it's because they were so entrenched in the culture of that. And I went back. I just kind of went back in the future. I just understood, hey, I have to communicate a different way. People are doing it differently. And I I won't say whether or not the way they're communicating was the right way, but since then, if it's a new ride or if there's someone, like if it's a new ride, I will ask how people communicate before the ride. Or if I see someone new on this ride that I go on regularly, I will kind of go over them, try not to sound patronizing, and just let them know, like, hey, like, this is how we communicate really quick. So those are
Yeah, like,
those are my takeaways.
are you guys screaming pothole on the left, or are you flicking an elbow, or what? Hitting a thigh? Hitting a thigh? What is that? I've never heard of that.
Yeah, they'll take their
I know that
fists
one.
and they'll hit that one.
Yeah.
But they were doing that.
Wait, let me guess.
So they were
Is that
doing that to
for
their
something.
Yeah, well, they were saying to
It's like a point out.
they were saying to like move or like to pass them on that side, but they were hitting their right thigh, and then I guess that indicated that they were moving to the right, so I would pass them on the left, like in like a pace line. Which
what?
Yeah, I don't know. It's whatever. I went over it I just moved past it because I try to be that kind of person and that type of thing.
Me, Alvin.
I mean, there would be no reason to go against that, but like, yeah, I would have thought that if you're hitting your right thigh or hip, that would mean there's a person coming up on your right.
Yeah,
or you have a
yeah,
or something.
And they were moving to the left. That's what I assumed in that moment, but that's because I hadn't asked ahead of time, and I wish I had, basically.
Fair.
Yeah.
Josh, what is another piece of group ride etiquette that people should know about, to put you on the spot here?
That definitely puts me on the spot. I mean, I guess the biggest thing is that you really need to not push the. I can only speak from my own experience, right? Like I could give advice for other people in other situations, but it wouldn't make any sense. For me, what I always have to remember is like whatever's happening with the pace, just like pay attention to it and stay in line. Don't try to like be different, because does not help in a successful group ride.
Yeah, you gotta. I have it on my list here. It's called match the vibe. You got to match the ride vibe. You know,
yeah, that's
don't
perfect.
go against the ride vibe. Whether that's, if the ride vibe is attacking, man, attack. If the ride vibe is chill, just be chill. Like maybe this isn't the place, and that's not rocket science. I think the one big pointer for me is that if you show up for a group ride, this is not just a ride with a buddy or two. If you show up for a group ride, have your shit together. Your bike should not be creaking. Your tires need to be inflated. Like, the parking lot of the group ride is not the place to install the new tire, which sounds obvious.
Yeah.
But some people don't know that. So,
oh man, I just don't even. This just goes into that. Like, who cares? Let them be. If there's like a creaking, I don't let it bother me. And if they want to, I'm not waiting for them necessarily, but like, I don't care what people do. Whatever.
The creaking for me is, I don't know what it is, but when other people's bikes are making noise, it always annoys me more than the other person. I hate it. I can't stand it. Like, get your shit together, dude. It's like
I try my best. I'm not saying that I show up to group rides with noisy bikes, but I am saying that I don't care if other people do. It's not something I need to care about. I just don't care.
The noisy bike thing is annoying.
Yeah.
Anyways,
then
go.
Josh, do you care if people show up on a group ride with aero bars?
I have never had it happen, if I'm honest. I'm not sure. I have had fixie people come and do like wheelies the entire time, and I wasn't super into that. So maybe
what
that
kind
falls
of group ride
into
was that, dude?
It was something in Portland, and that's the thing. It wasn't like it was. They weren't.
Like bike
it
party?
wasn't like no, it wasn't. That's the thing. It was a roadie group ride, and then there was like this fixie dude that was doing wheelies constantly, and I wasn't super into that. What?
Why were you into it?
Oh, because while I understand that they're doing it because they are experienced and that they're probably not going to fall, I would choose not to have that around me, because I certainly don't want them to fall and take me out, which is the aero bar conversation. Same thing.
Yep.
Yeah, there's some peacocking there. Sorry.
For sure. I will say that having been a mountain biker for many decades and also done roadie and gravel group rides, there is a very different vibe and it's not 100% true across the board. This doesn't apply everywhere, but you show up for a mountain bike group ride and it's definitely more relaxed, but also people are fucking around like that. They're messing around. They're like, I remember one time I reached over and slapped my buddy's brake lever without even thinking while we were climbing up a gravel road. He literally flipped over the handlebars. He scorpioned over the handlebars and then his bike hit him in the back of the head.
Yeah,
sorry, Scott.
This is unacceptable.
And yeah, but we all laughed. Even he laughed about it, whereas I've shown up to gravel or let's just call them drop bar group rides. And like, you're riding on the road and I'll have people get angry because I'm not like in the exact place on the road that I need to be, let alone like doing a wheelie or a big skid or fucking around. It is a different thing. And I think that all comes back down to the ride vibe. Match the ride vibe too,
Match the ride vibe.
Yeah.
You know what? Before we move on from this, I complained a lot and I want to as I'm thinking, I'm like, I want to share the story that like, I don't think I'll ever forget this group ride. And it was like one of the greatest. I just think about it all the time and how great it was, which was, I used to be on a team, although I never raced, but like I mostly joined the team so that I could have people to ride with, group ride stuff. And there were two people on that ride, that I used to ride with a lot. We matched sort of speeds. And there was one time the three of us were out riding, so you could call that a group ride. And there's this long, straight section, Marine Drive along the river, and I don't know how long it is. It's like 40 minutes maybe. And we fell into pace line rotations, 1 minute per person, so you get 1 on, 2 minutes off, and it was the most glorious thing that I've ever experienced. It was so beautiful, so perfect.
Team time trial,
rotations
baby.
We team time trialed along for that whole thing, and it was so perfect. And that was my Czech friend who used to be a junior racer, and I always found him to be impeccable in group dynamics, like really good. You could always follow his wheel and never worry, and just it was so good, so beautiful.
Yeah, it's nice. It's nice when it works out like that. All three of us are going to be riding together soon down in California for some upcoming video stuff. And I just need to make sure that I don't act like an idiot when we're all riding together in the group. I'm steady. I obey the rules of the road when I'm riding with you, Josh.
It's very
No arrow
important
bars.
for roadies. Just like be predictable. I have a very good friend who was like, "We're going right," and then just like went, and I was like, "I'm not going to ride with you again." Now I later went back on that, but like,
yeah. So it's funny that you say that. My girlfriend used to race road bikes all the time, and we would go to the city. This is many years after she finished racing, but she's like very much still a roadie, and I'm very much a mountain biker deep inside. And we would go to the city for road rides, like around Stanley Park, and we would like ride through the city, and like it's fun to do that stuff. And at the time, I didn't know why she was getting so mad. Isn't the right word? Maybe frustrated. But I was riding like a mountain biker. I'm on my road bike, and I'm like, oh, there's a break in traffic. I'm cutting across. I'm hopping over the meridian. Like up over the curb, like cutting through here, and it's a mindset thing. You just have to I wasn't matching the ride vibe. Like we're on road bikes, ride like a damn road biker, and if you don't, then obviously you're going to have trouble. And if you do, it's going to work. So match the ride vibe, everybody. Yeah.
Yes. Wholeheartedly agree.
I like it. I like it. That's a good way to bring it to the end of that conversation. That's such a golden rule.
Okay, fellow listeners, I think we're going to end this group ride of a podcast up at that point. Just remember to match the ride vibe. Alvin, what are you working on this week? What are you typing about?
So that's a great question because I'm not entirely sure. We have to wrap up some stuff for like bike buyer's guides and that type of thing. Josh, I'll talk to you about that shortly. And that's with Outside Magazine, and we're figuring that out a little bit. I've got some bikes to build. I've got a new cargo bike that is under embargo that I'm pretty stoked on because the price point's nice and low. I've got another budget bike that I'm really excited to ride from State. It's their new 4130 like gravel bike. So that'll be a lot of fun. And then, yeah, we'll see what happens.
Josh?
Yeah, so I have a lot of stuff from UAE tour that I'm like posting about right now. And then tomorrow, well, it will be tomorrow from my time, but I'm gonna do a chain wax thing on YouTube and also on the site, a little review of how to keep your bike clean, essentially.
Chain waxing. I would rather hot wax my gooch than hot wax my chain, everybody.
You should check this out. This is this is written for you. This video is for you because it's all about how I do not care if it's fast. I do not care if your chain lasts forever, but it's easy.
Yeah. Levy, I've also got stuff too that I think is slightly easier and is not involving you dipping your chain in wax.
Or my gooch.
Yeah, or your gooch. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. All right. Well, I'm actually driving down to see you guys real soon. I'm going to head down to California in a couple of days to ride some gravel bikes around the Mount Tam area before I meet up with you guys at the start of March for a little project that we're working on. So I'm excited to get the hell out of the rain, to be honest, and get back into some sunshine.
Yeah. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Good. Yeah.
It's beautiful.
All right, everybody. Let us know in the comments. Do you organize a group ride? Do you go to a group ride? I would love to hear your group ride horror stories, but also what you absolutely love about group rides. I think they're one of the most important parts of cycling. It's one of the great, longest lasting traditions of cycling. Let us know what you think, and remember to leave a comment. We also have comments on the Velo webpage now, which is crazy. So come and leave us a comment. Let us know what you think, and we will see you guys next week. See you later.